You're listening to international investment advisor Doug Goldstein on the Goldstein on Gelt show, the financial show where we'll talk about how you can make the most of your money. With all the confusing financial chatter bombarding you each and every day, Goldstein on Gelt will give you the practical information you want and need about living a financially stable life. Here's your host, money maven Doug Goldstein.
Okay, we are back. We are talking to Verne Harnish, who is the founder and CEO of Gazelles, which is a global executive education and coaching company. He spent about 30 years educating entrepreneurials. He's the growth guy, syndicated columnist at Fortune magazine, and he's the author of Mastering the Rockefeller Habits. Verne, it's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, glad to be with you, Doug.
Let me drill a little more into the title of your book called Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, What You Must Do to Increase the Value of Your Growing Firm. My question's like this. It's a very optimistic title, to become like a Rockefeller. Is it a realistic title as well?
Well, you know, I like to think, Doug, it was more kind of aspirational and inspirational. You know, look, I think in this day and age, there's really no time for amateur hour, so my view was, why not go ahead and learn from the very best? I mean, if you look at Rockefeller, he started with nothing. He became literally the wealthiest person ever in the world by a factor of 3. I mean, you take Bill Gates plus Warren Buffett plus Carlos Slim, and you get close to what Rockefeller was able to achieve. And so I thought he was a good example and somebody worth studying, and his techniques, I think, have proved to be timeless.
One of the things that you talk about is how it's important to get out of old habits that people have. How do you recommend that people, in fact, break their old habits? So it's one of those easier said than done kind of things.
You know, it is. And I've actually became a huge fan of Marshall Goldsmith. You know, he's kind of the top coach to executives in the world. And he has this thing, Doug, called a peer coach process that he taught a bunch of us last year. So I gave it a try. And in essence, you pick one other person. My peer is a guy named Sebastian Ross here in Barcelona. And you pick the 4 or 5 habits that you want to change. One of mine, by the way, was to stop eating sugar. You know, I was just kind of addicted to it. And every day, and that's the key, every day I would email Sebastian and answer the 4 or 5 quick questions. I had 5. Yes or no, did I do it or not do it? And he would do the same. And it's crazy. When you have to be accountable to somebody every day in changing a habit, it changes habits quicker than any other process that I've experienced.
So let's relate that to the world of personal finance. You know, my day job is that I'm an investment advisor. I do the radio gig once a week. I get to speak to interesting people like you. This concept of breaking bad habits is something that I try to coach clients on all the time, because they come in, they do a financial plan, they're spending huge amounts more than they can afford, and they say, but Doug, you know, everything, I have to pay for all of these things. Right. What would be a good word that I could give them in order to encourage them to get in line?
Well, I think literally pick a friend who they know well, that wants to improve their financial, you know, results as well, and say, hey, you know, with your advice, Doug, you probably said here are 4 or 5 things that if they would do these could really help, you know, improve their finances, and then make them hold themselves accountable to their friend every day. You know, did I spend money on this? You know, which is something, you know, they could cut out, and having to answer that every day makes it top of mind. I've never seen a process work better.
Now, certainly doing something every day sounds like a fabulous idea. One of the things that I like that you've focused on in much of your writing is the importance of keeping it simple, not making it so complex. So by saying I'm going to do these few things every day, that kind of fits in.
And it's, by the way, why we recommend this daily huddle. You know, in the very top companies in the world, like Goldman Sachs, they do these, except they do twice a day. There's something about, you know, the power of checking in daily and holding each other accountable, even if you're a senior executive and highly compensated. And those are the kind of folks that Marshall Goldsmith works with as well. We're the ones that need to stay disciplined the most, which is really, again, the message in Mastering the Rockefeller Habits. He's a very disciplined guy. By the way, he was an accountant by training. You know, a devout Baptist, you wouldn't want to party with this guy much. But he had, you know, he had the disciplines that were necessary to achieve what he did.
just to confirm, these daily huddles are not big committee meetings where everyone sits around and shoots the breeze or says his opinion. These are very focused meetings, right?
Yep, 15 minutes max. You know, we're talking about a restroom break and a chance for you to replace using an hour worth of emails where you'd be interrupting everybody all day with a quick conversation. And I like to point out that if you look at human history, you know, how much of that history have we been able to communicate verbally versus, you know, have Excel spreadsheets that drive us nuts. And I tell you, we are much better wired to discuss and talk about our issues and hear them than we are to read, you know, 1,000 emails.
Okay, we are talking with Verne Harnish, who is the founder and CEO of Gazelles, which is a global executive education and coaching company. They have a great website. They're on all over YouTube. So if you want to just see some of the ideas, you can also read Verne's book called Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, which teaches, going right to the source, how to become as great as Rockefeller himself. If people are looking now, they're business owners, maybe small business owners, and they want to do something to get to the next level. They're not quite ready to be Rockefeller. What would you suggest would be the first step someone should take today?
Well, I'm going to suggest two. And I want to take a page from both Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg. I know you're talking about startups here, but you know, the things Steve learned in the wilderness years, you know, between his gigs at Apple, was when he was building Pixar. He saw the power of fanatical focus, of having a team work on just one thing. Not 3, not 5, not 75, but one thing. And that was a lesson he then brought to Apple when he got him out of all the other stuff they were doing and said, look, we're just going to do 2 laptops and 2 desktops, divided the company into 4 teams, so everyone only had one thing to focus on. And by the way, when he would focus, like on his new retail store concept, he himself personally would spend 3 hours a day, by the way, which is the average of what an Olympic athlete spends training, not 4 or 5, but 3 hours a day, on doing nothing but making sure that retail store was right. So, first thing I would do is pick the one thing that you need to get most accomplished next and give it 3 hours a day for the next 3 to 6 months, and you're really going to move the needle in a big way. I just finished a new book, which I think is going to be bigger than the one I just wrote. And it was 3 hours a day for 6 months, but it's done, and that's how you get projects. And then the second thing, take a page from Mark Zuckerberg. By the way, who also practices these same Rockefeller habits, sets priorities for the year and the whole bit, is the new way to grow very rapid is whoever can tap into the most brains wins. And so the reason he did in 8 years what normally took Fortune 500 companies 80 years is he got all of us, Doug, to volunteer. There's 900 million of us that are updating pages on Facebook, and he hasn't paid us a penny. Same with Wikipedia, 7 million volunteers, Amazon, who's got everybody putting in reviews and all of that. And so your business model, I think, in this century needs to be built around how do you tap into the broader community to help you move your business forward.
So before we get to the whole broad community, let's focus on those 3 hours that you found. Now, you're a highly sought-after speaker. You run a major company helping lots of people. How did you find 3 hours every day?
Well, first of all, it's 2 90-minute periods. Our brain kind of works in 90-minute cycles, and so think about it that way. And one of mine is 9:30 to 11 o'clock at night, after the children are in bed, everything's quiet in the U.S. here from Spain, and obviously everyone's asleep in the East. And that's one of my most important 90 minutes. My other 90 minutes is in the morning time, right after the children head to school, and before everyone else is kind of awake. Being in Spain, nothing's happening in the U.S. for a while. And if I can get those 2, if not 3, 90-minute periods, then I still have the rest of the day to answer emails and do interviews like this and speeches and all the other kind of stuff that I do. Then you can get it done. So think about it, just 2 90-minute periods.
You spoke about Mark Zuckerberg, and I think this relates to something that you've referred to as the X factor, which is the exponential advantage that puts one company ahead of another.
Right.
How do you identify that in a company? Let's again, talk about from the position of someone who's an investor, someone's buying shares, and you've mentioned companies like Starbucks that you felt had this X factor. How can regular people determine whether company A or company B has more X factor in their treasury?
Yeah. Well, you know what? First of all, if you find it as a company, keep it secret. You don't even want to tell your close, executives in many cases. And only 1 out of a million companies ever really achieved this X factor, Doug. So for most companies, I wouldn't fret over it. But the way you know a company has it is, are they doing something that literally has blocked all of the competition? None of the competition seems to be able to even to get a toehold in the marketplace. And if you got a sense that a company's achieved that, either through the speed of adoption, as we saw with Pinterest or Facebook, or Apple's X factor is the fact that they built themselves on a closed system. And none of the competitors are even willing to go there. And it's the one thing we don't like about Apple, but it's the main reason they've been so unbelievably valuable, why they've got such a high marketplace valuation, is because they've been willing to do this one thing that generally upsets people and blocks the competition from copying them, but is the source of making lots of money.
So do you think that if a company has this X factor, this one source that can help them make a lot of money, that's a reason that their whole strategic plan could be narrowed down to one page, which is another topic you've spoken about?
Well, there's a lot that goes with strategy, the core values, the purpose, your priorities for the year. This is only one piece, but obviously it's a critical piece. And so we give it a place on our one-page strategic plan, and it's one of the 7 decisions you've got to get right if you want to have a killer company.
Do you think that the one-page plan is something that people could apply to their own personal day-to-day financial world?
Yeah, very much so. In fact, we created one we call ME, ME, which is really geared towards one-page plan for the individual or the family. And in place of cash, for instance, we talk about wealth and what are your wealth goals. In place of people, it's relationships that are important to you and how you nurture those. Strategy is really what are your kind of short and long-term goals. And then obviously in execution, we talk about what are the handful of habits that seem to be in your way of super success. And we all have these blocking factors, and we can't see them ourselves, which is why it's important to have a coach or a mentor. Look, Steve Jobs, had a coach up till the very end, Bill Campbell, who would go on a walk with him every Sunday for an hour, get this walk and talk time. And I've got a friend here in Barcelona, not only Sebastian, but a friend Thazar that I go on walk and talks with on Fridays, just so I can talk through things that seem to be blocking, my next level of success.
Yeah, I like the idea of focus. Even the one-page strategic plan, it reminded me that when I present financial plans to clients, it's a whole process. We sit, we interview them, we talk about their goals, their assets, their earning, the future earnings. And the book itself, the financial plan itself, is probably 60, 70 pages. But I would say about 95% of the meeting is talking about the one page, which is what do we do next? And the rest is really just the supporting documentation in case the client says, gee, how did you get to that, Doug?
Yeah, it's powerful and relieving to only have one thing to focus on. I'll tell you a quick personal story, and I know we've got to wrap up, but we have 4 children, and we've done these vision boards with them for several years. And this January, when we were looking at our 2012, we said, let's go back and evaluate the last couple of years. And the kids would always put 4 or 5 pictures up that represented the 4 or 5 things they wanted to kind of achieve. And reality is they only got one thing really done each year. So we said, why waste so much effort for 2012? And let's just pick one. And so every one of the children and my wife and myself just picked one theme and one picture, which, by the way, was a lot quicker. And it's been so relieving just to have one major thing to accomplish this year. And by the way, if they do, my 15-year-old son, it's Master Mandarin, Chinese.
Wow.
My 13-year-old is mentoring with this top architect here locally because he's got an interest in that space. And my daughter's, learning how to ride a horse, and it's something she's focusing on and deriving great pleasure from mastery of that one thing. And so, personal or business, the power of a single focus versus even two or three is unbelievable.
Sounds like fabulous advice. We have been talking to Verne Harnish, who's the founder and CEO of Gazelles. Verne, in the last few seconds, just tell me, how can people follow your work?
They can go to gazelles.com and sign up for my weekly insight. I put out something, these ideas every Thursday, and we've got about 40,000 leaders around the world that seem to be benefiting.
Okay. Verne Harnish, thanks again.
You bet, Doug.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world, but if you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt show.